Hello and welcome, Exiles, to the final optimizations update to the life-based Merc bot. This is really just the pinnacle of trying to make sure the defenses are clean, getting armor and PDR, getting 90 max all res, and getting a hell of a lot of regen. And then on top of that, I'd like to suggest some future min-maxing options you could go for if you want to take it further than I have here, as there's still quite a lot of room to improve this character's gearing, as well as go over the final pieces we ended up with on the Mercenary. Now, looking in-game, first thing I want you to notice is the tree is a little bit different as we have swapped out the clusters for double block clusters and combine that with, of course, the mastery we had before, the block mastery block for attack block. And now we're sitting at a cool 68, 63 block, almost just a little bit off the spell block cap, but looking pretty good there. Another thing I want you to take notice of, you may notice that we are now using an Adorned. I think endgame for life-based stacking characters, Adorned is very, very hard to beat. Sometimes you can maybe make an argument for small clusters, but I think it's quite hard. For Adorned, for the breakpoints, you need at least, I believe it's an 86 or an 87% to get 13% life from a 7% life roll on a magic corrupted jewel. Obviously, 100% is the pinnacle breakpoint, but that cost a fortune, and that's currency I didn't have to blow. Now, with these jewels, you want to be going for things like percent life, and then the suffix is a little bit more flexible. You need at least one jewel with max res in order to get the 90 max all res from melding. You'll notice right now my character, well, obviously I don't have purity of elements on me, so it looks like I'm undercapped, but I'm actually at 90 max all res here, and I'm like overcapped a little bit more than this suggests, because we do have purity of elements. So max res is important. You need at least one of these with a above 50% Adorn. This will give you 3 max res here. You have 3 max res here, 1 max res here. That takes you to 7. Obviously, the Mage Blood gives you 9 max res there. And then the Amulet, so you're at 16, just so we're keeping track. The Amulet gives you 3. 19 max res is what you need to be 90 max res with melding, because you started at 75, you add 19, you subtract 4 plus 15 is where you end up. 75, 15, 90 max res. That's how it works. If you have a little bit weaker Adorned, or sorry, a little bit weaker melding, like say you have a -5 or a -6 melding, that's okay. You just need one more of your magic jewels to have a maximum resistance roll. Another thing I want to note here, I haven't done this, but it would be really good to do. I'm pretty over on how much strength I have. You can go ahead and tattoo every extra strength node into regen to get even more sustain. My character in Hideout, I'll showcase real quick because I need to actually have Conk Ground to showcase the regen. Should have about 5,000 regen. 5,000 regen up here. Another thing, and part of the way we're able to get this regen is we have regen on Flask. And on top of that, we added in Rational Doctrine. Rational Doctrine, I think, is actually kind of huge for a build like this, for the big reason of whenever any of your Spectres, AG, Mercenary, if any of them teleport to you, whenever you're shield charging, every time you hit that point where your character stops, you will proc Conk Ground that has a linger of 4 seconds, and it applies to all of the things that stand on top of it that are your allies. It won't apply to the enemies. So, for example, it'll apply to the AG, it'll apply to the Perfect Warlord, it'll apply to the Turtle, and it'll apply to the Mercenary. This is really big for their survivability, and it's big for your own survivability. Gives you curse reduction. One thing I want to note real quick here is for Flask suffixes, I was a little bit lazy about my armor flask, and I just didn't even fork out. You can get this up to, I believe, a 60% roll. I was kind of a cheapskate, and I just bought a cheap one for like 20C. But yeah, you probably want to do a little bit better than that on your Granite Flask. It should still be pretty tanky, as we have 25,000 armor, plus 12 PDR, plus 10 Fortify, plus 5 PDR from the Turtle we're next to. So it should still be pretty dang good for most visits in this game. But that's just, I was being a little bit of a cheapskate there. Okay, so that's talking a bit about the changes to going to melding, going to Ruby Mask, Max Res Flask. This is just kind of telling you how to use a Mage Blood. Obviously, everybody knows Mage Blood's OP, but a lot of people always ask me, what if you go into a Mage Blood, what would you do? And then I'm just trying to showcase. You go melding, you get Max Res, you have the ability to add in, armor now really easily, because Granite's OP with the increased res or increased armor suffix, and that's how that works. Now, let's talk a bit about if you wanted to take this character to the next level. We only have 16,000 life. I'm pretty sure this character could very reasonably get above 20,000, and I'm going to give you the ways to do that. Number one is you might need to give up some block. Like, for example, right now we have block jewel here, block jewel here. You might need to go to 3 passive voices, 3 passive voices, and 3 passive voices here. And what I think you should do if you're really trying to optimize for life is you would go ahead and give up probably this pathing here, and give up these 2 nodes here, path straight up and over like this, and then you would add in, you know, a lot more life jewels. So that's one thing you do more is you can optimize more for more life jewels, which give obviously more HP if you really want to push that. I don't think I necessarily recommend this as I like the block setup. It's pretty clean in terms of mitigation, but if you really want to push your Merc's damage, that's one way to do that. Another thing you can do to push for your higher HP pool is go for reflected jewelry. This could be a manifold reflected with light radius and life on the front, and then going for a reflection that way. You can end up getting, I think, up to 300 flat life, which is quite a bit more than the 8% life here. Another thing that you can do is instead of having a 6% life corruption, you can start going for a volatile valve Calm's Heart. Calm's Heart can roll up to 1200 or 1210 or 1220. And then if you really want to min-max, you can get an enchanted glorious plate, imprint, and chance orbit until you hit a Calm's Heart. Every time you hit the perfidy, you have to go back to the imprint, and you can have a 15% enchant Calm's Heart, and then you could volatile that, and then top roll of that I believe is like 1400 life. So that's something you could do for optimization. Corrupting on, you can corrupt up to 30% light radius on the Hallowed Monarch. That is a huge damage increase. That's another optimization you can go for. Another thing, obviously, my rares are a bit lacking. I didn't try too hard on these, but they could have like 150 life each on both of these items, as well as I'm way over on Chaos Res. I have 140 Chaos Res, so a bit redundant on some of my Chaos Res rolls here. Part of just, you know, if we were to, for example, swap this out for a Manifold, losing this 35 Chaos Res, we'd basically still be capped. Chaos Res would be at 71 Chaos Res, so you could just get a little bit more. Like if you rolled this to a 35, you basically would be capped. Just something to think about. So that is talking about some of the gear pieces. Reflected Jewelry, Corruption on Hallowed Monarch. You could have, you know, better crafted shield here where you recom for PDR, recover on block. And then the third suffix has a bit of flexibility. I'd probably go crit reduction myself. If you go crit reduction on the shield and then you go crit reduction here, you're basically at 90% crit reduction. You'd be pretty much crit immune. That would feel really good for defenses. And another thing, if you path like this cross, I'd probably unspec out of these life nodes and I would grab this life wheel. It's just a bit more efficient per point. So yeah, that should cover a lot of the things you could do in terms of optimizing this character's gear further past what I've done here. Just to give you an idea, if you really want to push to 20,000 life, that's kind of some ways you would do that. Now, I don't have a lot of interest in doing that because I want to start setting up for a armor stack Merc bot, which the gearing and the tree is going to look, I think, quite a lot different. So that's why I'm not pushing this any further with the way it currently is. To follow up the Merc gear, I think I've showed most of it, but here's just another recap. I'm going to go through quickly, try to cover all the different quick crafting steps in like a short format. This quiver, it's all about the Fractured Unveiled mod for Frenzy Charge Gen, and then using the Essence of Scorn to roll until you hit attack speed or +1 arrow. +1 arrow gives you more clear, attack speed gives you more damage. So that's for the quiver, and then you do prefix crafting with bristle matrons, which if there's full suffixes will always give you suffix can be changed. So the idea is you slam 2 affixes, suffix can be changed, scour, block, slam 2 affixes, rinse and repeat until you hit T1 bow damage, and then you're going to bench craft on 32% increased elemental damage. You need an 86 quiver for T1 increased bow damage, so you may need to recom to raise the item level of some quivers, which I was a little bit lazy. I do have the correct item level quiver, but I did not, at the time I was kind of broke and I just didn't want to recraft it. For the helmet, originally I thought you needed 1 accuracy roll. I believe I'm actually incorrect about this. I think literally 0 accuracy rolls with just precision, especially if you have a plus empower here, giving levels to your precision, is actually enough to get you to 4K accuracy just by the precision and the base accuracy the Merc gets from their dexterity and the increased accuracy roll. And the level 83 Merc has a little bit more than the 82. That gets you to 4K accuracy, which should cap your accuracy. So I regret doing this accuracy roll. You could change this to something else, go for an Abyssal Socket Fracture or like a Lightning Res Fracture and then roll an Abyssal Socket plus Res type of thing. That's something you could go for. And then the implicits, the Pinnacle Reduced Life is for essentially canceling out like Maven regen. It shouldn't really matter. You're killing bosses way faster than Maven could ever heal them. And a bit of AoE, I think, helps the Ice Shot spread a bit, but I could be wrong about that. You could also roll, I believe, for Fire Pen here. keep in mind, this thing says it will increase your pen up to 200%. This is not the actual cap for pen. You can still have other sources of pen have additions on top of that. This is just the cap on this item. That was one of the things GG did to balance this item a bit more. So, past that, chess piece. I believe my editor is going to be working on a crafting video for this, but it's essentially a recombination method of transferring a grasping mail mod over to a new chess piece and then fracturing it. I don't want to go too in depth, but there's basically a way to guarantee safely fracture it once you have it transferred. However, the steps in order to get the mod isolated is not safe, and it's not guaranteed that you're going to transfer it. So it's a pretty much a very expensive craft where you're kind of gambling on the survival of the mod, then fracturing it, and then doing some hollow fossil combination afterwards, which there will be a full video showcasing this craft a bit later. Taming, really good for ailments. Ultimately, I think this maybe could potentially get beaten out by a reflected ring. So I think that's something you should maybe consider looking into. The thing with this ring is it's really good if you can get a large amount of ailments on an enemy, like sap, brittle, scorch, shock, chill, ignite. Ignite's pretty free. The brittle you walk underneath the enemy is pretty free. The chill and the shock, I would say, are a little less free because when you start doing harder and harder content, the small amount of cold and lightning damage the Merc's doing becomes less and less able to chill and shock those enemies. At which point, I would say that's when a rare ring can start to compete with taming. The other thing about the sap and scorch is those are a bit less consistent. For example, you need the boss to hit you. The boss doesn't always hit you. So if the boss doesn't hit you, the scorch isn't going to be on the enemy. And the sap from the AG, although it a lot of times is on the enemy, sometimes it's not. So there's some inconsistency there where I think optimization situation, there could be a world where you want to drop this taming for a rare reflected like manifold with increased elemental damage, and then a bench crafted or unveiled Leo increased damage. Like stats like that, I think you maybe could get more increased damage than what is currently getting from this ring, at least in terms of consistency. Maybe. Could be wrong about that. Really just depends on what level of content you're going. And at the end of the day, taming's still a really, really good item. As for the boots and gloves, I have a crafting video on this. I would just check that out. As for the belts, it was kind of just a reforge attack angle until we had open prefixes and full suffixes. I got a little bit lucky on getting res. Ultimately, that helps a lot. If you could get some chaos res, that would be nice. My character, or my Merc, doesn't really have much chaos res. I don't think I've had my Merc die to not having chaos res much at all, but it's still something you should consider trying to get on some gear pieces. And then, so once you have those open prefixes, you do an all-flame Warlord Slam, which gives you 2 options. And this can give you a decent chance of getting % fire damage, and then you can craft % increased damage, the Leo mod. So after all that, bow craft is about fracturing +2 arrows if you want clear. Fracture something like crit multi if you, or double damage unveil if you want basically higher DPS. After that, it is a Loathing Essence till T1 attack speed. The reason you don't do Zeal Essence until T1 crit chance is because Zeal only goes up to 18% and T1 attack speed goes up to 19, so it's just slightly better. If you can get a bow with 24 or higher quality, you get a little bit more from the enchant. You get an extra attack speed there. And then after that, the prefixes. Increased elemental damage with attacks is your best in slot prefix. The way you would craft this is Bristle Matrons, Suffix can be changed, Scour, block like Flat Cold, Slam Slam, and you're looking for increased elemental damage. If you really are tryharding to try to make the best possible bow, the second best affix, I believe, is actually T1 Flat Fire. However, it's really hard to get both that and T1 elemental damage unless you're trying to like really spend on the character. I wouldn't recommend fishing for it. And I would settle instead for Unveiled Elemental Pen. What you can do is once you get the T1 increased elemental damage, you can do Suffix Can't Be Changed. And then you can do a Veiled Exalt All Flame, which should give you 2 options. And hopefully one of those options is not removing the increased elemental damage. If you block increased Fizz, it's guaranteed to unveil Ele Pen because there's only 4 possible mod groups of affixes from Veiled mods. And so if you block the Fizz increase one, it's guaranteed Ele Pen will be on the other side. And then Benchcraft Gain Fire. So that should cover all the Merc gear. It should cover the optimizations we made in terms of this character and having a lot of fun with it. I think we'll go ahead and try to showcase here a let's just do a shaper. Let's just do an Uber shaper. And we'll send you out with a classy Uber shaper to showcase the final setup on the character essentially. For the life-based version, minus, of course, there's some optimizations you could do further on this character. which I am not going to be doing because I'm currently working on assembling an armor stack setup for Combatant. Combatant also, very cool Merc. I want to say this very clearly. Pretty much any attack-based Merc this setup will work for, and you can pretty much swap the gear in and out. The only thing that needs to change are the weapon slots. So any attack-based Merc that is not like one of the Resolute technique, i.e. the strength Mercs, should work. Combatant, I think, is a really, really clean one if you get Combatant Frostblades with Static Strike with like a chain on the Frostblades. When I've seen gameplay of that, you can check out like Binge Stream, or I think Neurotox is even trying it out now. It is very, very, very clean for that. And I'm looking forward to doing an armor stack setup for it, which I think will feel really, really good. So that's just kind of where we're at. We got a lot of setup to do for that build. There's some weird stuff I'm going to try to do with Ivory Tower Enshrouded, and then I'm going to go for an Enshrouded Hand of Phoresia with the Link Aura effect, and I'm going to try to become a pseudo aura bot, but also have life via Ivory Tower, because like Flame Link, a lot of your damage is how much life you have, right? So if you do a CI character, you lose access to a lot of that base damage, and I don't really want to do that. So the solution I've come up with is to become a Ivory Tower character. I freaking love Ivory, man. Which allows us to A, still invest into life, still get the base damage from the life, but then also to scale the Flame Link and the armor stack bot, because we can have reservation space via our life pool. That's the important thing. If you're gonna have auras, you need to be able to reserve, but if you're full like life character, you can't do that. Ivory's the one case where you can get away with being a blood magic character, reserving life, and going forward that way. Now you might be thinking, but Lance, I don't want to play with Balbala. I got some good news, which is this setup wouldn't be using Balbala, and that's just a showcase right there that our Fizz mitigation, Shaper Slam, it's looking real good now that we added the armor on top of like obviously the PDR. We have insane regen on this character, where, you know, we get hit and it's not really going to matter much. So we've achieved insane damage and insane tank with this current setup. The only content where this character is going to have any remote chance of really dying at this point is either A, a one-shot mechanic. The max hit is not good enough for an ultimate nuke from Eater. At least I'm pretty sure it's not. Like, you need like 500k plus max hit. The max hit on this character is good, don't get me wrong, but it's not that good, which hopefully our future setup will be that good. We're going to see if we can get there. And B, I would say like a Valdo's Quad Ghosted. Nothing really in the base game of like, you know, mapping is ever going to phase this character for the most part with its current setup, and Ubers for the most part, outside of their one-shot mechanics, they really just can't hit hard enough. So hopefully this is giving you, you know, a nice idea of like, hey, if I wanted to optimize a life-based, attack-based supporting Merc, this is a way you could do it. I don't know how well it would function in terms of like the spellcaster Mercs. There was probably some optimization changes you'd want to make for supporting spellcaster Merc. I don't know. I'm going to experiment with spellcaster Mercs eventually, probably closer to the next league launch, because I really want to get a nice list of like what Mercs can be good and what supports on those Mercs and what skills on those Mercs are good. Because I think there's a lot of like information that largely myself and the community don't really know, and it's we had the situation where everyone kind of focused Many Shot because it's just the character I was showcasing, and for the most part there weren't other streamers showcasing any other setups. But I think Many Shot is not the only good one. I think there's a lot of other good ones. Obviously, clearly Ben's showcasing Combatant now, and Combatant is quite insane clear with the chain and Frostblades and stuff. So I think there's some stuff I want to like look into there and get some like, I guess, more knowledge on. So yeah, anyways, this is what it looks like for us doing an Uber Shaper. Hopefully that was a good showcase of this character on a lot more optimized setup and how you can really make it the tank juiced, going for melding, going for the Rational Doctrine, which gives you and the Merc and the Spectre and the AGs regen, all that sort of stuff. And I tried to list a lot of the ways you could optimize the life scaling and make this character a bit stronger and a bit tankier and all that sort of jazz. This is the final setup I will showcase on the life-based setup for the Merc bot, roughly around day 6 of the league. And the next setup I showcase won't be for a hot minute. It'll look very, very different when we showcase it. Hopefully it'll be a functioning armor stack Merc bot type of combination. We'll see how that goes. As always, I hope you guys have enjoyed this journey of the Merc bot, and take care, guys. I'll see you in the next video.